I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. I've got Tuesday, June 25th at 6 p.m. Stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Give the staff to roll call, please.
Councilmember Weiss?
Here.
Councilmember, I cannot say that last name. Somebody help me. Januszkiewicz. Councilmember Gruber?
Present.
Councilmember Cook? Councilmember Hatfield?
Here.
Councilmember Missile?
Here.
Councilmember Adams?
Present.
I'll excuse tonight's absentee.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any agenda updates to the consent agenda? No. Consent agenda is checks 16,270, 16,291 in electronic funds transfers as follows. Accounts payable in the amount of $74,640.88. Payroll of June 20th, 2019 in the amount of $21,487.71. And the minutes of the regular city council meeting of June 11th of this year.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we move on to the citizens' comments part of the meeting. Anybody that has anything to say on non-agenda items, now is the time.
Am I supposed to come up here?
Sure. Whatever you like.
Oh, really? Can I stand back there?
You bet. I can hear you.
Last time they made me come. All I really have to report this time is that we're in the Friends of the Roslyn Library in the process of transferring the money for the Roslyn Library from the Friends to the city. And the designated receiver is still the Roslyn Library. Doesn't change that. It's just the underlying organization that administers and takes care of that project.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you so much.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
Lynn Louise, 400 North. You got it all in.
Yeah, an awesome job to the friends.
Yeah.
So I just wanted
Can you say your name and address for the
Sure,
record,
Chris
please?
Frankenfield, 317 South 2nd Street. And I just wanted to state that when I was reviewing the website an hour ago to pull up upcoming agendas, it was 2 weeks delayed. The last agenda that was posted was from June 11th. So the meeting agendas aren't current.
Did it still say 7 or did it say 6? For the next one, did it say 6?
The time for
The
the
time,
meeting.
the PM. 6 PM or
Are
something?
you're referring to a public notice, right?
No, the notice on
Just the
this
website
meeting.
itself, whether you noticed that.
I was just curious.
Like on the homepage, there was no notice at all about this meeting, if that's what you're referring to. On the City of Roslyn homepage,
Okay.
there's no notice about tonight's meeting.
Yeah, I think they want to clarify if the council meeting time, if you caught that when you were looking at the agendas, if it actually said 6 o'clock start, because it was 7 for a long
My
time.
point is,
It
it's
has
not
no
there at
idea.
all.
Okay.
That's even clearer.
So there's no start time.
Perfect.
Last upcoming agenda is June 11th.
So it is 6 o'clock on the.
So it's been corrected to say 6 o'clock. What she's talking about is a new section that just got added,
Oh,
where it posts
To
the
upload.
agenda for the upcoming that wasn't there before. So it's just, it's still in the process of getting it so it's there in time to update. But yeah, it does say 6 o'clock.
was that all you had, Chris? Or was it?
That's all I have right now, yeah.
Okay.
I just had I'm Chris Martin, and I just have a quick update from the fire department. One is that we're gonna mail this pamphlet out to all Roslyn PO boxes in the next week or so. Really trying to get people focused on cleaning up around town. It's the big, I mean, really the big threat is not a wall of fire rolling into town, it's a fire somewhere nearby and embers landing. or even just a fire that starts in town and kicking out embers and landing in long grass and ground grass and generating debris. So we'd like to encourage everybody to sort of do their part to clean up town. The other thing is we're gonna, on Thursday, we'll be installing a gate up at that road, the fire road that got kind of expanded and built up above your house there. We call it Arizona C Street. So that'll be a DNR gate going in there. We walked the burn boss from the Pacific Northwest team, incident management team, through the rough last week, and they're going to start drafting a burn plan for the prescribed burning that we talked to you about. They should have a draft by sort of the last week of July. And that's all we have to report.
Thank you for the update.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else?
Can I just ask Chris a question?
Absolutely.
When you get that draft plan, are you you'll work with the CAC on that?
Yeah, I mean, the draft plan, the plan is to come to the CAC and the council and just talk about the different units, and,
No, that's great.
you know, there's some aspects of it that are great to get input on, and others just kind of are what they are, because
Yeah.
of the law.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get that, but I appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That it? Okay, we'll move into announcements, presentation, and appointments. We got a presentation from Forterra, Community Input and Guidance.
So, Toby Levy from Forterra. So I don't bore anyone. Has anyone heard of Forterra before? Okay, all right. So Land Trust, 2 offices right now, Seattle and Tacoma. Traditionally buying forests, farms for conservation. Everybody knows this. Tiana Way being one of the bigger ones that we were involved with. We recently started working in more intensively outside Seattle and not just having all of our operations in Seattle. So we're looking to open satellite offices, other offices where we can divert some of the funding that has been traditionally just Snohomish and Pierce County to other counties. And we, many of you know, we're lucky enough to receive some pretty large donations and appropriations for affordable housing for Kittitas County. So we're trying to steer that towards Roslyn. So we're trying to understand what's going on in Roslyn and see where that money should be put. So we're going to be talking to a lot of people. We've started talking to a lot of people in order to understand where it should go. What are the core issues with housing? What are the core issues in conservation? Because we haven't done a large conservation transaction in Kittitas for several years. So we're not going to knock on your door, but we'll try to seek out a whole bunch of people over the coming months to understand if there's a role to play, if housing is needed, if it's needed, at what price point is it needed? Where is it needed? Is it needed in town? Will that cause more traffic problems than it's worth? So we're just on a learning exercise. We were able to raise a bunch of money, and that's usually it's the other way around. That we know a lot about the problem and then go and raise the money for it. But in this case, the legislature appropriated it. So that's me. So I'm the transactions lead, so the one generally negotiating for affordable housing, land, and other stuff like that. My colleagues, Michelle, our CEO, was out here last week meeting with some of you. And my colleague Rebecca, who's leading our work here, maybe you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing.
I'm Rebecca Boucher. I'm the Director of Community Development. There goes my pen again. I was out here last Friday. We met with a lot of people and talked about some of the issues that the town is facing and kind of learned a lot about what you all think about those issues and what needs to be addressed. And the interesting thing was that there were a lot of common themes that already are coming out. But as Toby said, we'll be continuing those conversations and broadening them so that we talk to more people. And eventually we'll also have meetings where people can come in public context and we can have conversations about what you'd like to see as we move forward. So you'll be seeing a lot of me. Thanks.
Yeah, and I mean, is it appropriate to see if anyone has questions about either the appropriation or who we are?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I'll just ask, is there currently portions of property that you already own?
No.
Or are in,
No.
discussion about?
Definitely.
Like, are you coming here with like this section back here, that's a deal that you're working on, and so you're wondering what to put there, or you're just looking for
No.
basic information?
I wish I could say yes to that. No. We know that there's obligations by large local companies to provide affordable housing that haven't been met. And we'd like to use that as a lever to get more funding in for housing and lower housing prices. We don't own anything. We're negotiating in a whole bunch of places. Those negotiations have to remain confidential, but we never ever undertake a project, even once we own it, without going through a pretty long community engagement exercise to understand what's really desired and needed.
Okay.
Are you considering other towns around Roslyn, like the Allen?
We want it to be Roslyn. We feel like the housing pressure and traffic pressure is here. But oftentimes we felt that in the past, and then it's not possible for logistical reasons to do it in certain towns. But the ideal for us would be here.
Can you give us an idea of the scale of what you're talking about, what the size of the financial, the number, approximate number of units, just an idea of what you're thinking about?
Sure. So between grants and donations and other monies received, it's about $4 million. So if you, the rule is in affordable housing that can generally leverage about $10 to $12 million. So at $10 to $12 million, that could pay for 50 or more housing units. So I would say the money's there for that. That doesn't mean it has to be that size, and maybe the will of the community is not to have that many more. And maybe it's to have more, we just don't know. We're just feel really lucky that Senator Warnick went to bat and got funds, basically.
So then, would you be the landowner, the manager of the affordable housing units? Is that what Forterra's role would be at that point?
We're not an operator, so we're a land trust. So we negotiate for the land and ideally get it down to the cheapest price point, because that gets reflected into the housing cost. And then we can contract the builder and ensure that it matches the community's desire. But we don't manage developments. That would be through a professional development manager, property manager, sorry. So the construction phase.
But you would have a property manager.
Well, I should say also, so we believe very strongly in ownership, not in rental per se.
Oh, I see.
So we don't believe in being the long-term. We just don't believe that long-term wealth is built through rental developments.
Okay, got it.
So one thing I would encourage the city to consider is the cost of supporting residential development versus the revenue that's received from residential development, and what are our needs to actually be sustainable as a city, and having a good analysis of what that is right now. So a lot of cost benefit analysis that I've seen is residential, for every dollar you get in tax revenue from that residential unit, usually you're spending over $1 to provide services for. And as a city, what are some other things that we might need that go beyond even just residential and affordable housing? Because I'm not saying we don't need affordable housing in Roslyn or in Kittitas in general, but we also need to think about what's sustainable as a city moving forward. And I know from my past work that the general fund is not big enough, that piece of pie is not big enough to support all the things we're trying to do in the general fund, and those are essential services. And so have that be a part of our consideration and discussion is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for coming over. I know you guys do a top-notch job, and it'll be, it's a lot better than having D.R. Horton down the street, doing the stuff in Flannel. So
looking forward to what you bring to the table. And then to echo, Mitch's point is that, yeah, I mean, the city's really gonna have to seriously consider some development fees and mitigation fees, which Forterra will, they're smart enough to completely understand that necessity. And I would also just encourage you to think about some mixed-use development, because we're not only short on housing here, but we're actually short on, businesses that can serve our community, and help mitigate, the more businesses there are within walking distance and biking distance, both of our town and the development around us, the less traffic, we can mitigate the traffic. And we just need some, there used to be a bank branch in town, there's not, there's a number of issues on that front.
So also with the affordable housing and the fact that you guys want it to be more ownership rather than rental, how do you keep that ownership from being vacation ownership? Like one person buys it and then they sell it to a person that wants a full-time vacation home, and then it kind of knocks out the whole idea of having affordable housing.
Do you want to talk about
Yeah,
Peter's?
so there's a couple of things we do. One is that because we want to maintain long-term affordability, and this will come back to your point as well, we make sure that the land has a restriction on it so that it restricts affordability over a long time. That either is in a land trust form or it's a cooperative, or we work out a way so that it retains that long-term affordability by limiting the growth of the resale value so that you retain that affordability you started with. It's not just the first owner that benefits, but going down the line. The other thing is that if you put a restriction on the land or you have bylaws for the whole community, then you can also restrict vacation rentals. You can make that
Well, we have that, but not a vacation rental, but a person, like I have, both my neighbors, who I
Right.
love, down the hill from me, both their homes are their vacation homes, their
Right.
family vacation homes.
Right, but it can be, that also is a restriction that could be in the bylaws, if that was the will of the community, that this was expressly, and that would go with the, affordable housing is not for a second home.
Right.
But I will say, right? But what I will say is that to make affordable housing, sometimes you have to have a mix and it can't all be at one level. So there might be some homes in the development that would be opened up to that possibility. But if that's something that the community was against, then that's what we need to know. That's why we go through the community engagement process. These are just options on the table right now, but there's absolutely a way to control for that.
And it can be a choice between, let's say you had 50 units and you knew that if you allowed 10 of them to be second homes, the other 40 could be $220,000. But if you didn't have that, they would all be $260,000. So that's part of the discussion that the community has to decide on.
Right.
Would you rather have that or just flat across the board?
That's why it's still that was a big part of the discussions we've been having.
Because it would be kind of interesting to see currently how much of our housing stock is family vacation homes. I mean, we've got a huge
Right.
amount of housing stock that's in that boat already.
It's been as much as a third at some points in the history of the town.
With the affordable housing itself, you usually link it to income, and that is part of the consideration is other properties that the person owns.
And you do have to be a full-time resident to be
okay.
eligible for affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
have one quick question. You guys keep using the words housing units and development, and so this light goes off in my head that that's going to be a lot of land use to put this development with these housing units in, and you're looking at inside Roslyn, and so I'm just wondering, as far as the city limits of Roslyn go, where do we have that much land? I mean, I know that we're going to discuss this next, but
Right.
even knowing what I know,
Right.
where do we have that much
Well, we're
land?
not just looking inside Roslyn. We're also looking in a ring around Roslyn. So the appropriation allows for anywhere in general proximity. So again, it has to come out through that type of discussion, because you can be in a situation where if you do it wrong, you literally inflate home values because you bring in more second home people. So a smaller number, you want to go to the smallest number you actually need, right? Otherwise, you're just creating an artificial bubble.
Well, and I would add that if we're encouraging more development outside of Roslyn, more impact, less revenue, how do we even sustain what we got?
Right, so it might be an advantage to be inside.
But that's just one of my concerns. If we're looking, because we have a tremendous amount of development that's happening outside of Roslyn, and aside from the bit of sales tax we do receive, we get absolutely nothing else. And the services that those things require are beyond what our capabilities are as a community existing. And so the other thing to look at is, as well as affordable housing, is living wage jobs. We've got an incredible service industry around here, but they don't support actually being able to have a home.
Which was your point, Chris, right? The mixed use.
Yeah.
Mixed use, and I would just throw in there that, Chris, to your point, the obvious elephant is the room is the number 4 mine site right here. It's 34 acres within the city owned by Suncadia. It's a perfect place for Suncadia to mitigate their housing obligations, right? The workforce housing obligations that they've got. So, I would also just encourage you, given its proximity to town, that we think about not just the workforce housing, but the families and the kids. And, we don't have a playing field, we don't have a basketball court, we don't have a pool. So if that kind of infrastructure can be wrapped into a truly mixed-use urban village type development, I think, everybody would love to see it stay how it is, or it was 10 years ago, but that's not gonna happen. So let's be smart about it.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming for this opportunity tonight, for presenting this opportunity. Affordable housing is something that we've been discussing for quite some time, and frankly, we're not getting anywhere with it, honestly. And so I would encourage you we should have a meeting, we should set a meeting. This deserves its own meeting. And where we could have a frank discussion and explore some ideas, and we have been thinking about it a long time. We're not coming to the table without ideas, because we do.
Sure.
But we've been stymied, and if you have additional ideas, I desire very much to have that conversation.
Great.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is appointment of Lauren Sally to the library. Is that I'm pronouncing that right? Sally. To the library board. Did Mayor Howes already do that?
Not tonight
This is the official.
was the official appointment. Yeah.
Okay, I can do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I didn't know if I said it or not. It says that he did. Mayor appointed Lauren Sally to the library board.
Yeah, so it has to be affirmed by council, basically.
Okay. Is
Move the
Lauren here?
appointment of Lauren Sattler to the library board.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Well, let's go from her if she wants to.
Discussion.
Is
Is Lauren present?
Lauren present?
Nope.
Okay, so that's
Aye.
What?
Nope, no discussion.
No, that's good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Lauren. Okay, we're gonna go to the public hearing on the draft comprehensive plan. And our attorney was concerned with our procedural rules of violations, or that we're not following them correctly, Robert's Rules of Order. So that meaning that when we do the public hearing part, we do the public hearing part, and then when we do the council part, we do the final reading, that we do that, and that they are separate. And that's all. Just that because we've fallen into a habit of where we would have the public hearing, and then we would have comment for a long time during the final readings as well, which we're not technically supposed to do. We've always done that, but it's usually been one or two people with just one little point, not like another discussion. Does that make sense? Okay. So, draft comp plan.
So that got emailed out and it's on the website. It's 80-some pages, so we're
Yeah,
not
okay,
being
you know,
so big.
We're gonna open I'd like to open the public hearing on that. And so, we'll do public hearing on this. Take public testimony and comment on the proposed amendments. Any person or public agency expressing an interest is invited to attend. That's what we're doing now. So, who has something they'd like to say about the draft comp plan?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And apparently I'm not using the website correctly, I guess, because I'm not finding what you guys are talking about agendas and all that stuff. Which meant that I could not find the I could not open the comprehensive plan on my way down here to double check that it hadn't been changed. But when I reviewed it 2 weeks ago and looked at the current map of Roslyn up against the proposed map, where some changes were made with residential area added, and I believe that on the chart it was a different color. It was either red for residential or yellow for residential, I can't recall. Anyway, Runge Field or Centennial Park appeared to be colored residential on the updated map. So I can't, like I said, I tried to pull it up to review it before I came here, so it might be something that you want to check and make sure, because unless that was intentional, that Centennial Park is supposed to be residential.
Okay. Do that.
So furthermore, is Centennial Park supposed to be residential in the new plan? No. Okay. Thank you.
There's a park zone.
What's that?
There's a park zone.
Public use.
No. In the comprehensive plan, there's a zone for parks.
But we'll double check what you're
And
saying.
Centennial
now.
Park
Okay.
should be in that zone.
So yeah, so on the map it says public use lands
Yeah.
and residential lands.
If I may,
Yes.
as I looked at the comp plan, I haven't looked at this current one, but there is no zoning map included in the comp plan. There are maps about different areas, but it's actually not, it doesn't include the zoning map. So it gets very confusing, I think. I was confused, so that might be part of what you're seeing, Chris, too.
Oh, we were talking about the commercial overlay and the residential areas. I wonder if that's how it was perhaps misconstrued in that.
None of that is on.
It's not on there.
It's not on there.
That map is not considered.
So we have Pratik that's,
Yeah, so I can clarify the map, so that's correct, there is not a zoning map. There's a current use map, which is the one where it's different colors all over the map because it's parcel by parcel. Then there's a land use map, which is different than zoning. So a land use is an overall type of use. So single family residential is a type of use. Then you have your zoning map, which we have not changed. So the zoning map still looks like this. The park is residential zoning in a residential land use.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that the city's gonna develop it into affordable housing, because it's a park, but it's just what it is zoned as, because you don't have a park zone. That's something we discussed kind of on the side, that you don't have a zone for City Hall, you don't have a zone for the cemeteries, it's just all in, well, you do have a
Public
historic
use, right?
district, but you don't have a zone that is for parks or public uses, so it's just, but nothing
Thank
has
you.
changed on the zoning map or the land use map.
Oh,
So I have a comment on the plan, Chris Martin, 205 East Idaho. And, you know, my concern with the parks is that we don't talk about anything for kids in our plan. And the school is overwhelmed, right? If you have children in the school, you know that practices go late at night. There's competition for the gyms and the basketball courts. Nolan's kind enough to open up his building for some practices, you know, the old school up here. But we're just short on recreational activities for kids. There's no, we don't have enough soccer fields. Whereas in Ellensburg, they have Rotary Park, Clallam's got the Rotary ballparks. We don't have a pool anywhere in the Upper County for kids to learn to swim, which is, to be honest with you, a life-saving skill, right? We all know that on average every year, a child dies somewhere in the county in one of our fast-moving rivers. So I think our plan, and particularly with this site back here, should talk about amenities for children. Parks, play facilities, pool, basketball court, soccer field, that kind of stuff. Thanks.
Mitch Long, 405 North A Street. So the latest version of the draft comp plan is up on the website now. Is that correct? It's been amended. Is there any more opportunity for public comment since that's been put up and amended? I don't know when that was done, but is there going to be another opportunity to discuss that?
This is it.
Plan, or this is the last one?
This is the last one.
Okay.
So with that, we can update it annually. So if there's something that you wanted to do, we can docket that for the annual update. We don't have to wait the full time.
Yeah.
I have a question before this time period closes.
Go ahead.
Does somebody read the written questions and do we handle those, or no?
So
I'll
those,
read it.
you can read it you can read it. They're referenced in there and they're part of the public record and the.
Oh, well, I have the same
But
question.
you can read it if you would like.
Okay, so I have a question, and I didn't state my name last time. It's Chris Frankenfield, 317 South 2nd Street. And so my question is, what is the notion for homeowners and sidewalks on the residential streets? What's the plan addresses the need for sidewalks, but I don't think it goes into much depth or detail. So my question is, what's the plan look like for that?
You want to answer that, Christina, or you want to answer?
talk about that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So currently, Roslyn standards require sidewalks on every street in town, especially for new streets. Every new street in town is supposed to have a sidewalk. Because we know that's not feasible, especially on some of these really narrow streets through town, came up with a plan to develop more corridors, pedestrian corridors throughout the city that would have more of a focus on putting sidewalks on them in the future. And the way that that could be accomplished is through grant funding would be probably the most, the best way to accomplish it is to get grant funding to pay for putting sidewalks. The other way is to change the city's regulations that require any new development, any new houses, I guess single family houses, to put sidewalks in front of their property. That's really the only way. There's funding, there's ways to require a neighborhood to pay additional property taxes every year to pay for putting sidewalks in front of their house. So if the whole city wanted sidewalks citywide, the city residents could agree to increase their property tax to pay to put sidewalks in citywide. That's probably not going to happen, but it is a it is a method of funding improvements like that. So what we would look at is more specifically identifying those areas, maybe planning for sidewalks on one side of the street compared to the other, so we're not having twice the cost, and then seeking out grant funding sources to install sidewalks, just kind of wherever they're prioritized by the city as the highest priority. So does that answer your question? Do you have more specific question?
No, that's fine. It sounds like what you said is that it'll be a vote by the community if it's going to cost the homeowners.
Yeah, but it's unlikely.
To pay for their own
That's
sidewalks.
not a very common method of installing sidewalks. That's more of something that they would do in a commercial district for business owners, not necessarily residential. So it would be highly unlikely that the city would ask you to pay to put sidewalks on the street. But there are lots of different funding sources, and the city a few months ago developed what's called a complete streets ordinance, and that source can provide the city a lot of money that can be used however the city wants, as long as it's a pedestrian related activity. And so the city can work towards being nominated to receive that funding, and it can add up to $1 million or more that the city can use, and that can install a lot of sidewalks or fix a lot of sidewalks. So it's more of being kind of diligent and looking for those funding sources and applying for them as they come up, and then determining which of those areas is the highest priority and which would look best on a grant application and most likely to be funded, so that the city can start installing sidewalks. And that will take some community input to help determine those priority areas and what it should look like.
Okay.
Kathleen Smith, 208 West Montana. I had a question about number 6, that the purpose of this plan is to discourage inharmonious development, discordant surroundings, and inappropriate design. Those are all very vague words. Who decides what's inappropriate or appropriate?
So that's targeted, I think, I'm not sure which document you're looking at, but I believe that's probably in the historic preservation portion or chapter. Or are you looking at the actual architectural design review?
Architectural design
Yeah,
review
so that's a
number 6.
separate, that's not the comprehensive plan, that's later in the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you answer the question anyway, or do we have to wait for later?
So the architectural design review code, the applicability and the purpose of that is to keep the historic nature of Roslyn. That's the intent of that portion of the code, is to keep things looking
Oh, I
as best we can.
understand that, but who decides?
So that's decided through the architectural design review process, which is the planning commission. Roslyn Planning and Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay, and you don't have any trouble with the word being that vague?
Well, there's specific requirements down further in there. That's just a general statement at the beginning, and then if you go down further in the code, it has specific requirements like roof pitch, square footages, and some more detailed information of how they have to actually build it to fit within those guidelines.
Anybody else have anything on the draft comprehensive plan?
Chris Frankenfield again. So I have a question about the new road that is being built according to the comprehensive plan. And I'm assuming that it's going from back here through to Ducktown, is that right? Like parallel to the coal mine trail, right here? Do I understand that correctly?
I'll let Christina talk.
So, my question is, what does the timeline look like for building that road? And the reason I ask is because if Forterra or Suncadia is planning to build a large housing development in that area, wouldn't we just wait for them to put in that road that they need? Okay,
So that
thanks.
is the purpose of having that road shown on the map, is so that the city has some teeth to require whoever develops that property to build that road.
Okay.
So it's it would be like a future plan. Well, this is what is the comprehensive plan is looking 20 years into the future. The city wants there to be a road that goes from generally this area to generally that area. We don't know the exact location. But by putting this future road into the comp plan is showing that it is a desired amenity or desired infrastructure for the future, and then the city, as part of a development application for that property, can work with that developer to have a developer construct the road. And so if it's not there, it would be much harder for the city to get that road to be built.
Thanks.
So it won't be there until someone else builds it.
Good answer, thank you.
If there's nothing else, we move on to number 6, the appeal on the 308 Nevada Architectural Design Review.
You have to close the hearing first.
And open it on each one?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
I just
close the
wondered.
public hearing on E5 and open the public hearing on the appeal for the 308 Nevada Architectural Design Review.
So the appeal that you have in front of you, he's got an appeal letter in there that kind of summarizes his, basically the appeal is for a 10-foot porch on the back side of the structure. Code only allows for a 6-foot deep porch. However, the draft code, which is posted online, does propose a 10-foot, well, the option of building a 10-foot porch on the side or rear 10-foot deep porch. So he's basically attempting to appeal on a draft code. So that is.
Okay.
So the draft code, let's just, oh no, it's public hearing.
Anything on that? Close that public hearing and open the one on architectural design review application process.
Mitch Long, 405 North 8th Street. Is this what is going to be the final reading on? You're accepting comment on that right now? And so I would just encourage the council to consider what makes Roslyn unique and what we're trying to maintain both through our comp plan and everything else. And having a diversity of thought and process through the application review process is important. And that's something we've made that has helped maintain our character. And that could be eroded rather quickly if we don't have a diverse pool of folks that are a part of that review and approval process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Gator, 117 Fifth Street. I agree with you 100% that we do need different eyeballs looking at things to make sure things stay, because we miss a lot of things. I'm also on the planning commission, for those of you who don't know. But I also know that there's way more important things that we are behind on because of all of the reviews that we did. So.
All of the what, I'm sorry?
The review application process of us going through that. Because it's something that we can't control. It's, based on public and people's buying property and that kind of thing. It's not a planned process. So, I'm probably going against council by saying this, but I will say that with a proper checklist, because the setbacks are this much, the roof pitch is this much. The window, how the windows are put, done, what if it's board and batten on the siding, those are all yes or no answers. With a proper list, it could streamline the process so that the property owner doesn't have to wait for canceled meetings, those types of things. If things come up that are not a yes or no answer, so if this is done properly, and whoever is in charge of that process says, you know what, this is a gray area, this is not, somebody is trying to go outside of the very strict laws, it can be brought to the planning commission for discussion or whatever. So I don't think it's necessarily taking our view or our opinion or our guidelines and our ideas and stuff out of, not ideas, I'm sorry, that was the wrong verbiage, but I don't think it lets these people not have a say in it or not double check things, but so much more things need to be done. I think we could have spent a lot more time working on a comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. I think there's code in the book that we've been talking about for months that we still have not changed because these design reviews come before us every single meeting. So I'm sorry for going against my team, but I actually think that it would be very beneficial to move forward with Roslyn.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
So Janine Rodine, 301 North B Street. Thank you, Karen, for speaking your mind. We don't always agree on the commission, and that's what makes this unique and valuable. Because we do argue. Because I agree that it would be great to have a checklist, we could check things off, but we don't. I mean, we should have one, but we don't. And maybe we could work toward that. But what we do is our different eyes see different things. And I was looking through, you know, the other responsibilities we have as a commission. We do have historic design review. In 11 years, we've done 0. We do special property tax evaluation. In 11 years, we've done 1. I won't go on. We've done 6 other things on that list of things we're required to do. They don't come up. We've done over 500 design reviews in my tenure. And I think that speaks to kind of how important it is that we do it. I got some copies of letters that I hope council also got with from different citizens who share a concern that most of the commission feel, but not all of them. My concern as I look at this, I mean, the very bottom line I see is mayor or his or her designee. That's legal language. That means the mayor can decide. We have, you know, we've had very wonderful mayors. We've had some mayors who would think very differently than this commission. So that would make that legal. Whoever is in this seat for the next, and I would say 10 years, because it takes a long time to change these things. That makes me very uncomfortable. So the other thing I'd like to say is, when Michelle brought this idea up, and I said this before, at first I thought, hey, that could be really good. That could work. But as I thought about it more deeply, I thought, that could be really bad. And one suggestion is the mayor or the designee could call in one of us to look at a design, and we would give some input. And that, I decided, is very bad, because that puts one of us in a position of making a decision that doesn't maybe reflect the whole commission. We're a small town. There's already one person on the planning commission from about 10 years ago who was in that position, and some people are still talking about that. I don't want to be that person. I want to have a commission that's behind everything that we do, even though we disagree, that we can stand together and make single decisions. Thank you.
Can I add one really quick thing? So I only got 2 emails with comments and I included those, but I do know just from talking to council that there were some other emails that didn't come through the city. So if you guys want those referenced in the record, the only way to do so is to reference them during this public hearing. Because I don't have copies of all of them. I have copies of 1. I think Jeff sent me 1. But if there's others.
I can say them.
Right.
So part of our title is historic preservation. And I see most of us feeling like the historic preservation of our community is its most viable entity, I guess. It's most, it's the big allure for what makes Roslyn what it is. And I think having people that really take that to heart and take it very seriously need to be on the commission, and we need to see the design reviews. Now, do we need to make it as long as it is? Possibly not. In the past, we didn't have a pre-design review. For some reason, all of a sudden they decided we had to have a pre-design review. That took up a lot more time for the general public to bring in their documents to us so that we could review them. Before, they brought them to us and we reviewed them. And if they followed all the guidelines and everything, they're good to go. If they're trying to, get something else that doesn't really fit, then maybe it would take them a little longer. But the city put that extra step in, and I don't know that it's necessary. It took a month longer, maybe 2 months longer if they had to take it back to their architect. So I think that was one thing that we did that elongated the process, and I'm assuming that having the planner or the mayor or his designee approve all of the designs was to expedite the whole process. Well, we, just a matter of 2 years ago, elongated the process. Why can't we just put it back the way it was? They worked for years. So somehow we elongated the process, and then we decided, oh, that's too long, so then we're gonna throw everything out, I don't know. As what you were saying with us doing the code and all of that sort of thing, the code went to the lawyer for months and months. It could have been done. It should have been done. But it went out of our hands and we didn't get to look at it for months and months. So it could have been done. It should have been done by now. Anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
You.
Kathy Cook, 402 East Idaho. I'm on the planning commission too. And I'd just like to reiterate what I said last time, which is that if we take what the planning commission is doing now and have it a huge responsibility be placed on our city planner. Right now we have Michelle. Michelle's great. Michelle's like really knowledgeable and really efficient. But she won't be here forever, you know, and you know, all of a sudden we're in a situation where you have a new city planner and then who has a huge amount of responsibility, and what happens then? So I think it's better to just keep things as they are and shorten the process, as Andrea was saying, and then, you know, just go from there. And we are facing a huge amount of pressure, obviously, because there's a lot of building going on, but I think we're up to it. I really do. That's my contribution.
Thank you.
Oh, you go ahead, I've already said.
Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll stand too. Catherine Johnson, 305 North Second. I'm also on the planning commission, so don't want to be quiet. But I've been on both sides. So I took a house that I had to have lifted and a foundation poured and rehabbed, and it took probably 6 months. So I see it as a new member of the council, you know, the need to keep the historic integrity of our town, but I also know it from someone who's had a contractor and rehabbed a house and, you know, needed several permits. It's been fine. I think we had to wait on the fence maybe for a meeting, and it really wasn't that big a deal. I kind of see it as protecting my investment. I really would like to see Roslyn keep its historic character, and not just for, you know, the sake of protecting my investment, because I really love Roslyn where it is. But I agree with what Karen said, and I think that I think if we had a checklist, it could expedite things and make things make us even more accountable to those people who are applying for permits. So I like that idea too, but I really think that we need to see the application systems come in, so we can look at the designs.
I just want to reiterate that I get it, permitting can be difficult. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but that's the cost of doing business. And when you come to Roslyn and you buy property, you have to follow the rules. And those rules are in place for a reason. And they should be fair, but to streamline things or to try to make it so things happen quicker, we're going to end up with unintended consequences. We're going to end up with potential tract style developments like we see over there in D.R. Horton. I mean, people are coming here with a lot of money and they want to do things, but they need to follow the rules, and we need to make sure we've got an appropriate amount of accountability to those rules and our historic standards. And with that, I think you're getting that out of your volunteers that are working very hard and diligently on the planning commission. And you know, it may not be a problem today of someone coming in and proposing a 10 or 20 or 50 unit development, but I can guarantee you that when looking at some of the plans out here, you know, you're looking at 2 or 3 or 4 different types of homes, but you know, is that gonna, in the row housing, I mean, you look around town, do you see any house staying, you know, it's all very different and unique, and to maintain that I think is important. And that's why people want to be here, and we could potentially lose that if we're trying to streamline too much.
So I, again, agree with you, Mitch, but I think to be able to do that, part of the process needs to be streamlined. So obviously if a development comes through with houses, it doesn't hit a yes or, like, the first question on the list could be, is this more than one plot of land? You know, is there more than one development for this thing? If the answer is yes, then it comes before the commission. So the way that this is done really is the key. I would say for at least 50% of the design reviews that come through, we literally could have just taken 5 seconds and then said yes, 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 yes. No, not all of them. And those are the ones, whoever was going through the checklist and saying yes, and then all of a sudden no, that comes before the commission. So I'm not saying taking this away, I'm just saying with a proper thing, we would be able to write better code to uphold our historical stuff, and we could be proactive to the development instead of reacting because we have all this stuff. And I know there's been ideas of, and different ways of trying to do subcommittees and stuff, but then it takes away, again, the whole 8 people looking at something at the same time, which is always, I think, the way that a council or commission should work. So, in most of the cases, I think it would really speed up the process, not in all of the cases, so that we could be more proactive to do code and regulations.
So, Chris Martin, 205 East Idaho, and I'd like to just support the concept of these decisions going to the paid professional city planner that we've got. Because really, at the end of the day, it's about interpreting our existing code. And so she could make a checklist and run it by the planning commission. She could probably do that by the end of the day tomorrow or something. And it's not that complicated, because when they do plan review at building departments, they have the checklist. And then the planning commission brings just so much value to the table, but that's about actual forward-looking planning of what we want and what they want the community to be. And that work just isn't getting done now. Like, there's been a lot of talk about work on an ordinance addressing franchises. You know, that hasn't really moved forward. There's gonna be plans one way or another, whether it's for Tara or for Sun Katie or someone, to do the number 4 mindset. I mean, we have to just face that reality. Like, that's gonna happen. And I'd rather have the people that have spent a lot of time learning about the city and doing design shrubs and all that over the years, focus on those bigger picture, longer term things than going down a checklist of building materials and roof materials and porch size and you know, I don't have a good technical phrase for it that's polite, but it's just a lot of minutia that bogs down from the big picture. So I would really love to see, us move towards a building department permit process and a planning commission focused on the planning development that's coming down the pipeline.
Didn't go deep through one of the, I just want to correct first, we did work on franchises, the lawyer has them.
Oh,
A lot of things we did work on vacation rentals, that's passed. We have been meeting on, we have been meeting in subcommittees, we have been working on code this whole time. It may not look like it's being done, but if you come to meetings, you can see it being done. It's not a public process. I'm not arguing, I just want to clarify, because I just don't want people to think we're not doing stuff. We are doing stuff, but it's important that we do those things in concert with each other. The design review, checklist sounds great, there is not a checklist. If you want us to develop a checklist, we could work toward that, but at this moment, in this time, with this level of development, I ask that the council let us do our job.
Yes.
Kathleen Smith, 208 West Montana. I'd like to speak for slowing down the process rather than speeding it up. I mean, everybody knows we're under a huge amount of pressure here to develop. I've been on both sides of the permitting process. I got slowed down by it when I first moved here, and then I had this guy come in and cut all the trees on my side of the property because he hadn't done his survey before he started on the next round. So when you're under pressure like that, you have to have a process that everybody knows and believes in. And I think there's a few things that could be done to make it a little more possible. I don't want to argue about the minutia of the process, but to try to find out what's actually going on, it's almost impossible. This group of people have this little piece, and this little group of people have this little piece, and there's nowhere you can go in the City of Roslyn website, correct me if I'm wrong, and find out what are the permits that are pending, what are the development ideas that are pending, what is the, plan that's pending. So it's really impossible for a citizen who cares about this stuff to participate in any kind of an informed manner. You just have to kind of like come in here and grab a piece of paper and hope you're on the right number on a piece of paper, I mean, that is not a way to make decisions that are this important. So I'd like to see a participatory public process that not one person, never one person, because the amount of pressure that's on that person is huge. And even if they don't take bribes, which is entirely possible, I come from state government, so I've seen these things. You know, it's entirely possible for a person to just not get complete information. They have all kind of pressure on them. How are we going to round out the whole picture and put it where people in Roslyn and the council and the planning council and the staff all have the same information?
And I just have one more comment, and I agree wholeheartedly with having the support from the professional staff that we do have, and we're very lucky to have Michelle. She's very knowledgeable and works very hard to help guide the right decisions that either the commission or the council makes regarding planning issues. But this is the first time the city of Roslyn has ever had a planner that actually has the background and a degree in planning.
Yeah, that is true.
And if we were to lose Michelle, are we going to actually pay for that? I mean, looking at what those professional services, what other cities are charging, can we afford that? So that's all I have to say about that. I mean, not to take anything away from Michelle, I think she's great. But we need to make sure we're protecting our interests in the long term. And how do we do that? Right now, we're doing it through decisions that have to go through the Planning and Historic Preservation Commission.
If that's all, we close the public hearing on the architectural design review application process.
Can we let the chief jump in next if he has something?
Oh yeah, Chief, would you like to go now before we wrap this up with the rest of our business?
Sorry for being late, but the city of Clayton has changed their meetings to 6 o'clock this
Oh,
morning.
no.
We can't do that, we did always follow us.
They said, hey, we did that so you can be there at 7 for Roslyn. So, obviously that's-
They're just copying us.
So I'll be really brief. You've probably seen all over Facebook, there's people that have had their credit cards with fraudulent cases, and I'm here to dispel Facebook rumors. Okay, so I have prepared a press release for the Tribune. It's been sent to them, so hopefully they'll be publishing soon. I can just read this real quick. The police department has currently received several complaints where victims' debit card accounts have fraudulent charges placed on them. This time there are at least 17 people have come forward, all who have bank accounts with Kashmir Valley Bank. Kashmir Valley Bank is being cooperative with the investigation and has assured the police department that they have not experienced a security breach with their bank records. At this time, it's believed that the account numbers were illegally obtained through the use of a skimmer. The bank has not been able to determine a time frame on the date or dates that the customer's account numbers were captured by a skimming device. It is also expected that several more customers will have reported fraudulent charges, and a list is being developed by the bank and provided to the police department, so we have a good account of everybody that was been affected. And also to let you people know, over the last month, it's not just been Kittitas Valley Bank. There's been multiple banks with Washington Federal, U.S. Bank, Wells Fargo, etc. So it's not just Kashmir Valley Bank. The banks are, all the banks that have been involved with the customers with fraudulent charges have already reimbursed the victims. So basically now the bank is the victim. And it's common, I saw it all over Facebook, oh, I used my card at Safeway and then boom, I got scammed. And I need to dispel the rumor that automatically means that Safeway had a skimmer, okay? Because they did check, they didn't have one right now. But it is very common to put a skimmer into place. Those numbers and accounts are captured by that. Some of these skimmers do have Bluetooth technology where they don't even have to pick the skimmer back up. They can just drive by it, get the information, download, and then they have the numbers. It's been very common. This could have happened months ago. Those numbers were just held in cash. They've now been sold via black market, however they do it. And now that it's all happening at once, it just means those set of numbers are being put into play. So we don't have a definite time frame when the skimmer was placed or its exact location. So we're still in the process of working the cases. So just wanted to dispel all the rumors for Facebook, and don't think that if you go to Safeway, you're automatically going to shoot it now. Oh, well, that would be really good. The police department is looking at getting into their own Facebook type page. It'll be more of an informational, so we can put stuff like this out immediately to dispel rumor mills and actually put facts on paper. However, because it's going to be a public entity, it is subject to public disclosure, etc. So there's some certain hoops we have to go through. Fortunately for us, one of the new council members for the city of Cleveland, that's putting dust for Lynn. So he's already met with me and discussed about helping us do that. So we can get that process up and running. So.
Are we going to see police blotters on there? I love the Ellsberg ones. Just had to ask.
Nobody in our departments is with you. Just had to ask. Does a fantastic job. But that's the exact thing we want to do. Information get out there.
Yep. So, great idea.
Thank you very much for the information. Appreciate it. So let's move on to the final reading of the draft comp plan. Is that 18.30.020?
That's for the architectural design review processing.
I don't think I have the other one in front of me.
You should have that.
Do you have it?
No, wait.
Just missing
No
that
eight at all.
one.
No,
It goes right to.
and then it goes to.
Oh, well, it's this resolution.
It's
Yeah.
this
Oh, it's just this.
Yep,
Okay,
it's just your
I thought you handed
ordinance.
it to me.
Which one?
This
The
guy.
ordinance.
The ordinance adopting the comprehensive plan.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So we're gonna read this entire thing?
Just the first, an ordinance adopting the City of Roslyn Comprehensive Plan update for the motion.
What's the number?
It doesn't, it'll get assigned a number after it's,
Oh, I see
Randy
that.
assigns them.
Okay. So,
Move adoption of the comprehensive.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to the,
Sorry, I know we just dumped out really quick the comp plan, but I should have said, the point of designating parks into their own category, is that something we can do? Or
Yeah.
is that just maybe next year, or is it?
No, that we can actually do within our official zoning regulations, so within our zoning map, we
Okay.
can actually do that, within our development regulations.
Just all, I guess all the three parks that come to mind? I'm probably missing one, but, well, besides the section 17, I guess.
Well,
Then we'll go fireman's.
Fireman's Park, the
Centennial.
Centennial, Rungy, and then the
you're
Roslyn.
talking about the forest.
Is the forest on its own then? It's designated
The Roslyn
as
Urban
well?
Forest is actually its own zone,
Its
the
own
urban
zone,
forest
yeah.
zone, so that's what you
Okay.
would see for the park, is it would be another
It'd be
zone.
a park,
Yep.
So just that. Sorry, I should have said. No, I knew I
No,
had
that's
something
okay.
on there.
no, it's fine.
And thank you, Chris, for bringing that point up.
What's that?
Yeah,
Have
you're,
any discussion before we do the
You're
final
right.
vote.
Yeah, I messed up on that. So I guess if you could maybe make a friendly amendment to that, even though we jumped ahead.
How about the Coal Mines Trail?
And and designate the Coal Mines Trail, unless that.
I guess I would think of that as discussion for future,
Or for future.
for future comp plan updates. I mean, I just don't know if we're in a position to make those kinds of changes.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be something we would necessarily, because like Christina said, we just have a land use map in there, so it designates that, so it would be something that we would do within our development regs, which we can update at any time, we don't have to wait.
Oh,
We can do
yeah,
that anytime.
For discussion later on, sorry. Something
Yeah,
that we
but
need.
good to capture
Yeah.
and to talk about it, whether we need for that.
I also include in that discussion Jensen cabin. That's like,
Which I think we're gonna talk about later on in the meeting. Stay tuned.
We run to the final reading of the number 9, the Appeal 308 Nevada Architectural Design Review. Mr. Council, pleasure on this one.
He passes engineering.
Yes, he does, it's fully engineered.
The one thing on the engineering note I saw,
Do you guys want to make a motion
the
first
snow
before
is
you discuss?
95.
You can make a motion.
Motion.
I'm gonna make a motion on appeal for 308 and have discussion
Second.
before we pass.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Have you looked at the engineering notes on there? I saw there was a
Point of
95-pound
order.
snow.
Point of order. What is the motion that we're discussing?
Yeah, so
He made-
make a motion one way or the other, and then the motion can be withdrawn after discussion if you chose to change it.
I'll make a motion to deny the appeal.
To deny the appeal, okay.
We can go back and look at it after we discuss.
Okay.
Second.
I thought the snow load was 128 pounds, or 130 pounds for snow load.
So the ground snow is 130, and then when you calculate that out, it comes out to a roof snow load of the 90.
95?
Yep.
Okay.
And then they can take further reductions for metal roofs from there.
And then,
But
was
that's the
this-
standard.
was it built 10 feet prior to any acknowledgement that we were changing that 10-foot rule per?
Yes.
The planning
So the permit was issued for replacement of a deck, and it was red tagged for the roof
So
structure.
there's no notice that we'd be changing that rule prior to
Not at that time.
The project is completed though.
No, it's been stop work, so it does not actually, it's, the roofing materials are not on it, so it's just an open roof right now.
Okay.
But to 10 feet.
Correct. It's at the 10 feet.
So right now it's uncovered.
Yes, it's a,
It's got a
what do you call that, a
structure,
pergola?
a pergola
Yeah, it's a
that-
pergola, it's a 10-foot pergola at this point in time.
So, Andrea Sweet, 305 North Main Street.
This is what we were supposed to not do.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Well,
okay.
it was in
So,
our- Yeah, you
if
can
they
make a
on
point and then
this, if they do a roof structure and it extends 10 feet, that increases their footprint for their building structure as well, and it needs to be under 1,400 square foot at this point. So that roof line is considered, will be considered the footprint if you end up going with the 10-foot additional square footage.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think that answered my questions. I was just curious on when it was done and when it was really.
Okay. All those in favor of denying, yes. Say aye.
Alright.
Okay, so that's- On to number 10, architectural design and review application process. What's council's pleasure on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
As amended plan historic preservation during the public hearing, June 20th, 2019. Or, sorry, project review classification, here it is.
Motion and a second, any discussion?
Yeah, I am moved by the comments from the planning commission. And I have been around long enough. I have seen mayors of all calibers of capability. And I have seen planners of all calibers of capability. And we have an excellent plan today. But there's an excellent chance we will not have one next time. there's an excellent chance that person will never have worked in planning in their life, and will get on their, all the training on the job right here. Primarily because we're paying, poverty wages, that's how it is. You did a little better, but in general, that's how it is. And so I am concerned, I'm convinced that putting those decisions, designing the decisions in the hands of one person who already does it will not meet the needs of the city's also. So I intend to vote no on this, is that the way this moves forward?
So I am too torn about this because, I do like to see a lot of eyes on projects, but I do appreciate Karen's comments on this, where I think that's possibly a good way to go. Yes, the checklist could be there. I think giving that power to one person, the planner, that we hopefully trust and hold in that position, put on by the mayor, who we trust and hold in that position to make the best decisions. That's why they're voted into this position, to make the best decisions, and then they make the best decision, and if they're not, then there's repercussions from that. I've seen issues in Roslyn recently in our planning, in our development in Roslyn. I think the houses that are being built are crazy high. The height on them is ridiculous. That's something that needs to be addressed. The plat that just went up, that needed to be addressed, and it hasn't. There's all these big things, like Mr. Martin said, a huge thing right here that needs to be addressed. We're looking at these little tiny things, and we're not looking at the big picture and the focus of Roslyn. We're looking at windows and fences and porches and things that a planner that we give, I believe, good money for, and continue to hopefully give good money to, and benefits and a good living wage in Roslyn, so we can have that we have this. Like, it takes nothing away from the work that you guys do, but I think need to utilize you guys more in a upscale and big picture way. Roslyn is fading. These houses are crazy, and there's no stopping of it. It's just going and going and going, and people are still going, oh well, I'm just going to put a window in because I don't want to deal with the planning. It's summertime, and I don't want to put a window in August. I want to put a window in June. So how do we expedite that? We need to expedite these things because people are just doing them anyways. We're losing money, but we're also spending a bunch of money and not recouping that when we need to. So I think there needs to be a change. There has to be some kind of change because we are, dropping the ball on some parts of our revitalization or keeping Roslyn historical in what it is today. So I'm going to vote yes for this because some change has to happen and some focus has to happen somewhere else. Some focus has to happen in a bigger picture. And you guys are awesome for it. You're a great leader to lead in big, huge projects. Not wasting our little time with things that we're hearing could be put on a checklist and go boop, 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 done. Boop, 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 done.
I'll follow up, and I get this. We're talking about power, basically, and the power is in the code, as far as I'm concerned, and it designates. We've got whatever 3 pages it is of architectural design standards, and those are the standards. If anyone is not adhering to those standards, then they should be held accountable, like you're saying. If we had a planner that was willy-nilly, or a mayor, then that person should also be held accountable if they were approving things that don't meet what we've decided, as a community, and whether some of those things and other things might be adjusted in the future, is obviously always something that we're doing, is our process. But so that's that. And the other thing I'll say on it is that new construction is not historical preservation, and so it's not an easy thing for sure. But I think that true preservation of what is historic would behoove Roslyn And, I mean, I think that having these standards is important. Whether we all agree on them, maybe is definitely not the case. And the byproduct and the manifestation of them may not be what we intend. But we're also in history. At some point, everything that's built now will be history. And, you know, it's kind of a changing mosaic. And so the houses that are being built now have a certain look. I think they kind of look similar, but we also have we have pretty strict standards. And so it does limit that, you know, what someone wants to build to kind of a certain look. That's all I have for now.
I would say, as a liaison to the Planning and Historical Commission, I've gone to every meeting since I was appointed, as I promised I would. I learned what you guys do and how you do it. I appreciate everything you do. I think the code you are writing and revising is the backbone of what will be here in Roslyn. I think there are a lot of bigger issues facing Roslyn as well too. I think a checklist needs to be established. That came up at one of the meetings we were at recently. We talked about, you guys talked about it when I was listening. I think that's important because, as Nolan and some of the other council members have said, we're not going to have Michelle forever. And she's very good at what she does and needs to be commended. She's gone through a very difficult, since I've been appointed since April, she's gone through the comp plan, this whole thing. I don't know how she's doing it in 40 hours, because she's not. So everybody's working really hard. I think the checklist is a great idea. I think some of that could be simplified. I mean, what are we going to do with subdivisions? What are we going to do with that part of the code? And then you got to deal with these attorneys. And I do that in my real life. So I know it takes time to get answers back from those people. There's a lot of research involved in that. And so I'm kind of splitting the baby here a little bit. I want the checklist, but I'll vote for the change.
So let me just interlude before Jeff says, because we've heard the checklist now from everyone. The checklist exists. I'm holding on to the checklist to see which way the checklist is going to go. It's been created. I created it over the weekend because it is needed either way. So it exists. So one thing down. Who will be using the checklist yet to be determined, but it exists now.
Really doubt you guys have worked, you gals have worked really hard in past years of creating your list. You've done really well. My vision, I think it's time to expedite things a little differently to our city. One thing that sort of caught me was the note from the attorney. You know, one thing she stated, and this is true, this is how she looks at it. This ordinance does not change our substantive standards relating to either architectural design or preliminary site analysis. That does not change, which is what we do. We're just changing the format, how it goes about that. The proposed ordinance does not eliminate your role as a planning committee. It designates what you're supposed to do. That was after reading what she sent to us. Just a different role that you're going to do. I think it's time we change that role. I think we're into a different building time. And that group was started. I think we have a good hold of what our city likes, what we need. We're not eliminating you out of the process. It's just to help expedite the process. We were open, we said that if Michelle left, if the mayor left, they're held accountable. We would relook at this issue. But at this point in time, where things are at, I'm a yes, I'm ready to move forward. And thank you for your time.
But keep in mind, once one thing changes.
Nope, not allowed to speak.
Well, I'm mayor tonight, not voting on this, but if I were voting on this, I would be voting no as well because of all the points that have been made by you all. And I think when I look forward, I think about, you know, expediting today versus what happens in 20 years. That's how long I've been here. And so I think, what do things look like in 20 years and I know that, you know, the idea is that they won't go that way, that they will go according to the code and according to a good planner and a good mayor, except I've been here a long time, as Courtney said, and seen that not happen, regardless of code. and regardless of people in their positions. So personally, I would be voting no, but it seems like I'd be losing that vote anyway. So. But that's my take on it, which I'll say since I have the floor. But anyway, if there's no other further discussion, we can take a vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
Next is, oh, that's it, mayor and council concerns and initiatives. Anybody have any?
Yes. Do you have contact information? You have
Yes.
a card? Oh, they want your cards.
Yeah. Well, and on the same thing, one thing I was thinking when we were talking, because we are talking about our codes and what is our, not that we're gonna change it for whatever you do, but for all of us to think about, if this was a potential, what does our code allow, what does it not allow, what is currently feasible, and what might we wanna consider for feasibility for truly affordable, whatever that is deemed, when we get there. So, not anything we decide now, but just, it's a lot, for sure, right, but add it to the list to consider.
I have one concern that was brought to me by the U.S. Post Office here in Roslyn with our parking and people violating parking between the hours of 3:35 in the afternoon and 4 o'clock to pick up their mail. If we could have somebody there, one of them always shows up. I sat there and waited for him. He showed up at 3:40 and he sat either in the handicap spot or the lined out part for the handicap spot for about 10 minutes. And we can't mark the handicap spots any better than they're marked or sign them any better. And it's a Roslyn resident, it's not a West Sider, so we can't point fingers, but we could have an awesome, and I know you guys are stretched thin, trust me, I know that part of the industry. But if they had one day during the week that happened to be cruising through here and was down by the post office around 3:35, you might
Sneak me around the corner.
I just sat on the bench. I would have written 2 tickets. There were 2 people doing it, but the one guy always shows up. But we do have handicapped people who do need those spots, and but there is a specific time period. So if you happen to have somebody around at that time, sit around the corner, walk around the corner, and be waiting for him when he comes back, he may yell at you. He probably will. I think you know who he is. But it would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
We agreed as a council to increase our parking fraction, I guess it is, $200, and I wonder where that is in the process, and that might be a Brandy.
You know, that's a Brandy question. I thought it already came back before you guys, but maybe I'm thinking incorrectly. I'll ask her. I'll follow up with her. I don't
I
know.
know some of those things take
Yeah.
an extra step.
It did come before us. I think this seed of it has been initiated, right? Or that.
Right.
Yeah, because it came before us when the attorney was here, and then
Yeah.
the attorney was going to look into it, and I thought we got the answer back, so
Yeah.
maybe it just hasn't circled back yet. I'll find out.
I don't recall what the answer was.
Yeah, Chief Ferguson brought it up. If we did something, it could be something
It's
that
gonna end up,
could
Yeah.
be worse.
we're not gonna actually see the money
See, yeah.
necessarily,
Yep.
or even the
There's
police
some-
department. 'Cause the
And
county-
that was sorted out with the attorney, so we got an answer on that,
Yeah.
and I thought it came back to you guys, but it didn't sound like it did. So
We
I'll.
voted on April 9th, 2019.
So that was your first night?
Oh.
It was my very first.
Always remember your first night.
And you brought it to, yes.
I vaguely remember that.
Okay. I'll find out.
I have one too. I would like to hear what the CAC has to say about the road plan in the forest. I would like to hear what they say.
Not tonight though, right?
No.
Just in
Well, we
future.
don't. Yeah, we don't have a plan yet. So
Okay. I just
when we have a plan.
No, not tonight.
I got a couple. So we did take a drive on the proposed closed road up on
2A
2A. Thank you so much.
on this, the urban forest.
On the, on that one, the second map over there. 2A, we were looking. CAC was asking us to decommission it, which totally obliterating the road, inaccessible. We went on a cruise with Chris Martin, and then also Chief Scout Schottish was present at the station, but they were talking about how this road is pretty much a fire access for potential anything up in the rosin forest, to make kind of circle boundaries on different sections, and this would be a crucial road to possibly keep open but keep it closed. So closed with 2 gates on either end, but not fully decommissioning the road. So that was brought up. Maybe we should talk about that here pretty soon in the meetings to come. An update on the water line on South Street. I saw that we did some work.
Yeah, we, I called a couple weeks ago, and we put the test on it that sort of kept track of the seismic meter. It spiked every time the sprinklers came on down at the lower, that's what we thought. It took pressure all the way down to 35 pounds.
Which usually
one time down to 22 pounds.
Which usually they have.
Heavy fluctuation. As of today, there's the valve that we discussed that we, first of all, did not even know it was there. Once it's been discovered, it was about 8 feet down. It was frozen. I have not got the report. It was dug up today and replaced. It didn't move at any sort of, you should be able to shut that water off, so we don't know if it would increase or decrease pressure, because it was frozen. So I'll get the report first thing in the morning, what that's actually done. We'll probably have to put the pressure reader back on for a number of days and see by turning that up if that is what it is, if we can adjust that fluctuation pressure. And if it does not do that, we've already had discussion that we're pretty much done with this problem, and we will go ahead and find another means of getting water there, whether it's down the alley access and pulling it from Hawthorne, Hoffmanville Street. We would pull it through the alley access there, through the back of the old cruise in. Exactly, and we would continue that all alley through, and we would try it that way because we know we don't have fluctuation problems at that point.
So,
and that's sort of where we're at, because we've got to get this off the table, and there's no doubt that if you had 30 pounds of pressure at your house, you'd know it.
What's the normal pounds of pressure?
Pardon?
What's
85 is
80,
pretty
okay.
standard. Typically, it gets turned down like 80, not 70 is not uncommon. Most fixtures are regulated that they don't want to go above 85 pounds, so. And so that's the status of where we're at. It's in progress, and we've already had a decision. We've discussed it with the mayor on what we'll do on whatever this valve replacement does.
So,
and we'll move ahead.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's all I know right now.
No, I was just gonna say you might just want to add that Mike was able to isolate it to just those three,
the three
lots. It's
yes.
not the entire
It
Logan's
was
Lane.
just the three
It's
properties.
just 3
off
properties.
The road that we don't have really fire access to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that doesn't have the proper roadway. But it is a lot in 2 homes. So we'll go from there. I'll get the report in the morning. I just talked to them mid-morning this morning when they're in the process of it. So.
Appreciate your bird dogging decision.
Yeah, thank you.
Pardon me?
Appreciate your bird dogging decision.
Yeah, it's something we have to resolve. We need to resolve. So we discussed the plan with the mayor. Michelle's been in discussion also. So we will move forward tomorrow when Mike has an answer. And if it's a new water line, then we'll discuss it and make a plan and move ahead. Yeah, I feel the pain, you know, it's, you don't think it's, you know, you think, oh, just, you know, a little bit of fluctuation, but, it's not a lot of water pressure at 25 to 30 pounds. You can't do a lot with that. You know, it'll destroy your dishwasher, destroy your washer and dryer, or your washer. We'll see what happens.
So another discussion that we probably want to have is, I've been hearing the Jensen cabin. Again, well, and maybe just rumor or whatnot, but I've been hearing a lot of discussion about possibly moving the Jensen cabin to the cemetery and then selling the property. I've been also hearing just getting rid of the Jensen cabin and selling the property. So I just wanted to bring to light this rumor and see where, and maybe if it's just a rumor.
As of working with the cemetery commission closely, and working up at the cemetery and a volunteer for the Roslyn Heritage Club, I'm quite involved in the cemetery. That is a complete rumor. This rumor had been brought up years ago. I've discussed it with Honorable Jerry Porter at one time the mayor. I discussed it with Dick Watts, who's been heavily involved. These were all just rumors.
Okay.
We have a nice kiosk up there right now
Yeah.
that we're in the process of building, and at this point, you know, there's not been discussion. I think, honestly, in 2015, when I was on temp council, it was a rumor that somebody had wanted to take it up there for some of like a tool shed or a visitor shed. I would say Dick didn't forget his dream of having a real kiosk up there, and that was shelved pretty fast. There's a lot of people that put time into moving that structure there. You're putting the foundation up underneath that, and I think it means a lot to leave it there right now. And we'll see what kind of rumors come up from it as we move forward. How about that?
Just check.
But it is purely a rumor.
Perfect. That's all I need to hear.
Yeah, along those lines, if you read something on Facebook, to anyone watching this, if you read something on Facebook about the city, it is at best 50-50 that it's true. And that's a really good number. It's probably more like 2 to 1 that it's not true. So,
And please come in and ask.
just ask,
Just
just
like
ask. Before you spend however much time
Thank you for
debating
asking.
it into the void.
Just wanted to close it, just in case I was asked that again.
I actually like it. I look at it on my front porch while I have a beer. And, my family lived in that house. It was one of the first family lived in that house in the late 1800s. So I'm actually would hate to see it move. To be honest with you. So.
Good enough.
I have 2 more quick things. So I was on the tour with Councilmember Weiss and Chris Martin in the forest talking about his lens, Chris's, of fire planning and if we're going to do prescriptive burning, what resources the fire department or Trex would need, or DNR, to make sure that it can be done as safely as possible. And it just made me realize that sometimes it's a bit of a vacuum at council, and that especially with our forest that is kind of, I don't want to say under construction, that's not the right word, but it's in process, right? We did this logging, there's rehabilitation that needs to be done, there's, and I guess, I think we may have jumped the gun on really deciding those things without more information on the ground, and just seeing it is really helpful to see it, and also realize that, at least with the forest in general, we have to balance safety and property rights, which obviously is in the forest, but in general, and how, how we use that space in terms of recreation too. So hopefully we'll be just looking at that a little more thoughtfully, and kind of balancing what the needs of that area are. And also, if council is okay with it, I haven't done any work, but I was interested in contacting the Pay by Phone company, which is our parking service, that just to see how municipalities do it, what the cost is. You might have seen it in other cities where you go to park and it's not a kiosk, it's basically whatever designated lot, and there's a sign, pay by phone, your credit card. So moving forward on our infrastructure parking issues and where that might be appropriate, and not to do anything just if everyone is, I don't know if I need permission, but I didn't want to contact them as a representative of the city without everyone being at least knowledgeable about it, just to get information.
Yeah. Whatever you want to make. And then you come here and discuss it, and it may or may not move forward, and you
Right.
can make a contact.
No, I support the movement for sure.
Yeah.
Just as an
It's
idea to see if it might
idea that can
be
work.
appropriate in some places.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
You have full and unmitigated permission to talk to anyone about any issue that's facing the city.
Okay.
One thing I want to speak to your trip up at the rough with the fire department. It was a good wake up to go after we made the decision last council. It really changed my perspective on a couple things as we looked at before we, and I think Mitch actually pushed it. Mitch, I think Mitch had a couple things he covered during that meeting. And one was really taking our time, and I think we made a decision early on that, and you were really trying to slow us down. I don't think we caught that picture clearly when we made that decision last council meeting on some of the abandonment roads that we discussed. And after going up and looking at it, definitely changed my perspective of that road. And I think one thing that stuck with me is I think it's important that we let our fire department and fire administration, I think we need to really listen to them and working along with the CAC on what roads need to be used as fire breaks, what roads need to be used as fire roads. And I think that should solely be dependent on the fire department through egress and ingress issues to get up there for rescue and fire breaks and so forth. But I like to see CAC focus on their trail and trail plan, to coordinate those two together as fluently as we can with both people's visions of what you want to see as a CAC, but also life safety is a huge concern, obviously, with the fires we've had. We're getting more and more activity up in the rough now that we have winter activities, you know, with the grooming and so forth, that I think the emergency service is incredibly important. And we need to listen to what our fire chief and fire administrator need for access to accommodate that appropriately and efficiently if there's an accident, a heart attack, or anything that happens up on that hill. And I don't think we've looked at it in those meetings at all. And when you start going up and look at the map and we abandon the road, you realize that there's two ways out at that point, which are a lot longer than going straight down that road. But we need to make better decisions that way. And sometimes it takes slowing down, and you mentioned it about slowing down, and I think we just got a little bit ahead of ourselves. I voted for it, and I made a mistake, and that was why I thank you all for going up and taking a look at it after I looked at it. I think it changed your perspective probably just as well as mine. So, but that was it, just sort of to say that I'd like to see them, you know, we listen to what they have to say, and what CDC needs for trails, and make sure that they work together on how to make it happen for both. That's it.
Well, like the CAC, the fire department makes a recommendation that we approve here.
Yep.
That's how it works.
Yep.
Okay, let's just be clear.
So something that you kind of keep you brought up a point where keeping scope, we need to keep a scope on, and I think it's a #1 priority in the city of Roslyn, and it's been on my mind for way too long, is that, and I finally got to see it, and seeing it actually created a bigger picture of how big of a problem it is. And I encourage everybody that hasn't went and seen our water treatment facility, from the water treatment facility in Ronald all the way to Domery Creek, and seen all the issues that we have. That is our #1 issue that we have in front of us. It is actually a scary thing to go see. We have 2 holes that sounds like a tractor is going down the road when you approach this hole, or both of them, and we have created possibly a wetland because of our negligence to this issue. So this issue has to be resolved. At least one of these holes needs to be plugged this year. As a council, nothing else I think we should get done besides getting one of these holes plugged, and that would be a good thing. Like anything that we have in front of us, that should be #1, because then that's not even the biggest problem. We have 2 holes that are seeping out of our water reserve, that's our money water. That's a huge problem. And then we have also all this broken infrastructure, like the chlorine emergency sprinkler system is broken. Our eye wash station is broken. We have horrible things that we are putting in the hands of our employees that we're saying, well, this is how it is. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but I don't know where, I don't care about blaming anybody. It's about how we need to solve these issues. But that is, if you haven't went on this tour, and I've been on the council since 2012, and I never went on this tour until 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that's our biggest concern right now. It's scary.
Mike and I have had the conversation about, and we've talked to Joe, actually past Public Works Director, a little bit about it. That's how long those leaks have been going on the pipeline. And we're working with GNO. As of last week, we decided we'd be making a call to GNO. They're going to help us come up with some type of collar system for at least one of them to start with, the minor, if you want to call it minor. And the plan to shut down and fill up tanks and shut down for a temporary time to give a repair chance, try to repair this summer. And that's something we've decided that we definitely are working on. So it's in engineering right now in the sense of GNO looking at what we need to do. It may be a trial and error, obviously.
Yeah. It's been there for 10 years, they said, so it's like, hey, might as well
there's
try.
There's a couple of hiccups, obviously. One's right at the bell of a joint, which is incredibly hard to put a coupling on. but, so we'll start with the lighter, or the lesser of the two. But it was, as of last week's meeting, we had a good Public Works meeting here last week, so we're making some strides to make an attempt to slow that process.
Cool.
of using water.
Thank you.
And I believe the dive team is gonna come take a look at, inside the tank, up at Rome, of the two holding tanks, and see what, if he decides to laminate it with what we've had there, and then we'll take a look at that also at the same time. Besides the cover being changed in September, up at the cemetery also, which is still on plan for end of summer, so, Public Works has got a lot on their table this year.
Well, I just wanted to note, the city used to have repair vans for the old line, and so they did have to be designed by the manufacturer. It was always our recommendation to have a bunch of those. When I was on staff,
Yeah.
we wanted to have more of those on hand, but we never got the budget approved by council to get those.
Do you know if you had any left over?
I think we had 2 when I left the city, but that was
5 years ago?
12 years ago.
Yeah.
So, well, no, yeah. Has it been that long? 6 years ago. I don't remember. But we did have some, but we
Yeah,
were
but
going
that's what I heard
through.
in the discussion, that there was some, I think Joe Peck had mentioned, he had made some makeshift ones also, a little bit, but I'm not really into a makeshift, that type of life.
No, these were actually designed, they actually took some pieces of pipe to a company and.
The outside OD of it to make an
Mhm.
actual.
And they
coupler
made
for it, yeah.
couplers that also worked around the bell.
Okay,
Um,
can I email you some questions about that, but maybe you remember?
I would suggest talking to Joe
Okay.
about that.
I'm happy to do so, yeah. He's already offered to come up with me and take a look and use our head, pick brains together and, see what we can come up with. So
I'm just, and GNO should be fully aware of that, so.
They just got put in the loop last week again on it. So.
I'm just suggesting maybe not spending a whole bunch of money with GNO designing something that's already been designed.
Yeah, I think they're gonna come take a look at the leak, because we have to do it appropriately, we have to go through an engineer period to do a repair on it.
Okay.
For Mike, so Mike's our Public Works Director, I'm gonna follow his lead, and, we'll continue down that path. I don't wanna put a Band-Aid on it, okay? We wanna fix it right.
Fix it.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a full new
we've had multiple crews go through there, and there's been no attempt, so.
Not a surprise.
I don't want it to be an attempt, I'd like it to be a fix, so.
Gino has been involved, as you've said
Yeah.
before, this is old.
Gino's been around here for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah,
And this problem's been around a long time.
Yeah, it's, not getting.
And it kind of goes hand in hand. We've been kind of dealt this year especially, and sorry that I keep rambling and taking people's time, but it's just kind of where it's, I think, evolving into, where we have these opportunities like Forterra and also TNC that have brought us these kind of really awesome opportunities that, yes, we fully should try to take advantage, but of course, look at the big pictures. Like, if we do have a development go somewhere, we need to look at our water infrastructure and maybe piggyback these kinds of projects off of these big opportunities that we have. But yeah, also, we don't want to look at like, oh my gosh, they're going to come in and change us, or oh my gosh, TNC is trying to give away our forests. We need to look at like how can we take advantage of these huge opportunities that just presented themselves this year to us. Like, these are actually opportunities that really I don't really see come around. Like, this gentleman told us they got $4 million. I don't know, gift. They're there for the budget, appropriate to them. It's like, when do you ever hear about that? That's kind of, so again, I want to move forward with these conversations and work with these groups, especially TNC, huge one with water, Forterra, possibly future with Roslyn itself. So yeah, it's council and future council and so forth. These are conversations we need, and citizens we need to have. So please, public, come to our meetings and discuss this. Our planning meetings and our city council meetings. Make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I
Sorry.
have one announcement real quick. So the attorney has scheduled tentatively herself to come on the 23rd of July for a training for Open Public Meetings Act for all of the committees, all of the commissions, and the council before the council meeting at 5 o'clock. So we'll be sending out a notice, but if that specifically doesn't work for somebody, then I guess let me know as soon as possible.
When are you sending out that?
1 hour before the regular meeting.
Probably Thursday.
The 25th of July?
23rd. 23rd of
23rd
July,
of
so
July.
just before the regularly scheduled council meeting, so there'll be second council meeting of the month. 23rd of July.
If there's nothing else, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn tonight's wonderful meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you for coming, everyone.